So there's been a lot going on in the news recently, and I haven't really addressed any of these issues, and they have been heavy on my mind. And so I just want to have this conversation, and I figure I'll just do a vlog. Okay. And so recently, and you know what? I want to kind of like highlight the major events and then tie it all together because they are all related. So recently, they used a drone and blew up a drug trafficking boat. And in all my life, I've never seen the United States do that. You know, like they said, normally the Coast Guard would just shoot out the engines and then they would board the boat and that whole process. That's always was the case throughout the years, but now Trump has, ramped it up to the next level, and so now they're not even playing around with these people anymore. And I just want to say I'm so glad to see that. I am. Uh, okay, so as I was thinking about this, it's always like, well, what? How much should I share? What should I say? And all that. Okay, and so this hits home for me when it comes to crime, when it comes to drugs, when it comes to violence. Uh, I, I I have a background in all that. Okay, so I've experienced all these things firsthand, and so I speak from that experience, and also understand that most people are good law-abiding citizens, and so you know, they aren't aware or experienced in this underworld, right, of society. But it very much exists, and so we see Trump trying to crack down on crime in D.C. by sending in the National Guard, which is that's what's needed, and wants to do it to Chicago. That's what's needed. But there's such a pushback from, of course, the governor and the mayor and these Democratic politicians. And why would they want to push back against a president trying to get a handle on a growing crime uh, epidemic, right? And see, the thing is, it's not that it's just, little old ladies are having their purses snatched. It's not that, right? It's violence. It's the violence. And we know that violence begets violence. It only increases on itself. And if we don't do anything about it, it won't solve itself. Violence isn't gonna fix violence. Okay, it doesn't fix itself. And so I just want to just share my story a little bit. I was born in '71 and I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. So during the '80s, we know there was the big crack epidemic here in the United States, and Detroit was one of the main uh, uh, participators in that movement in the '80s, and I got swept off into that. Okay, uh, and so before you know, by the time I was 15, I was around kilos of cocaine and pounds of marijuana. Okay, so I know that sounds like ooh, but trust me, at that level, the violence is at that level. Okay, so there was a lot of shootings, there was a lot of murders, there's a lot of violence that comes to drug dealing. Okay, there's a lot of crime that comes to those who use and abuse drugs. So overall, the whole industry in and of itself is not a good thing. It's not righteous. It's not of the Lord for sure, and it doesn't do anything to aid society at all, right? So I got caught up into that in the '80s, all the way in it, right? And so let me say this because I never started this channel or wanted to make content off of those things. You won't see me really talking a whole lot about those stories, or I don't, or even my time in prison, right? I spent 14 years in federal prison for armed bank robbery, right? Okay, in '93. So let me say this, uh, and the reason why, because I don't want nobody to get the wrong idea about me, okay? But at the same time, I'm transparent, right? So I will share my life experiences, but it's never to glorify these things or to make it seem like it's something that's cool or to be desired. Not at all. Not at all. It's an ugly part of my past. I can't run from it. I can't ignore it. So I try to, uh, you know, just use it for whatever good I can. Okay. But let me say this, right? I've never taken anyone's life with my own hands. And I thank God for that. You don't even know I'm so thankful for that. That even though I was in those circles, I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've been around it, right? But I've never with my own hands taken anybody's life. Have I hurt people and spilled blood? Yes, I have, right? I have, okay? I have committed violence. And these are things I'm not proud of. Even to this day, I still struggle with a lot of it on a mental level. And I thank God for His grace and His mercy, okay? But I have to say that because I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea, right? But then at the same time, I need to be able to share these things, okay? So with that being said, when I see Trump sending in the National Guard to get a handle on crime and stuff like that, I'm so excited. And then when I see that they're starting to really take it to the cartels, I'm so excited because I've always said we know that what 80%, 85% of the drugs that come to the United States are coming from South America, coming from Mexico and Venezuela and Colombia. You know what I'm saying? These South American countries. We know this, right? The cartels, and they're just right there. And so I'm glad to see. And this ain't no hate to the cartels. I get it, right? Do what y'all do, but at the same time, there has to be checks and balances to things. And far too long, these people have been just given the green light to do what they want to do, and they have flooded this country with drugs, which has destroyed families and communities and lives. I know people right now to this day are still incarcerated from what we went through back in the 80s, right? And so, and when you know the history of that whole crack epidemic from the 80s going into the 90s, it was all engineered. These people were allowed to bring tons and tons of cocaine into these cities, into the inner cities, making it cheap. And then they started doing these mass layoffs at these plants while they sending the jobs overseas. It was just a recipe for disaster. And we saw that, and I am I hate to use the word victim of that, but I'm a product of that environment from back in Detroit in the 80s, okay? I'm making no excuses. I chose to do the things I did. But when you take a poor kid from Detroit, from already a broken background and situation, and then you introduce these opportunities, especially we're talking back in the 80s, early 80s, stuff like that. I mean, you know, 9 out of 10 of us neighborhood kids, we all got swept up into that and seeing that as a way to make money and live life, right? So, but with that being said, all that had to do with the epidemic of drugs being flooded into our cities. And so I just want to say I'm so thankful to see that we have a president now that's standing up against these cartels, that's showing them that we're not playing. We see you on the waters bringing drugs, we're going to take you out. And that message right there, I know the cartel, they understand that message, that kind of response, and so they will act accordingly. Uh, Peace through power, right? Peace through strength. That's the motto. And so I just want to get on here and share my thoughts about that. And so I'm glad to see that we actually have a president that's taking the initiative to really get a handle on crime and get a handle on drugs, because a lot of people don't understand the trickle down effect or the trickle up effect it causes to society. It does. And I want to say this too, right? See, what most people don't understand, this billion dollar, multi-billion dollar thing that drugs do, that money is not coming out of the inner city. See, a lot of people are unaware of this. You know, most of your drug users and drug addicts that keep the drug business alive and going be people who can afford to buy drugs. Okay, and so they always want to just think that it's just the ghettos and no, let's stop it. We're not the ghettos aren't funding a multi-billion-dollar drug empire. Okay, there's people that are lawyers and doctors and politicians and so on who make money who can afford to buy massive amounts of drugs. That's who's keeping the drug a multi-billion-dollar drug organization in power. Okay, let's keep everything in perspective. All right, so I ended there. Thanks for watching. If you like what I do, hit me with a sub, a like, and a comment. I welcome it all. Until next time.